foundation is actually sleep, stress recovery, movement, and food. This carb kind of bolus feeding, I sometimes call it, is new to our bodies, essentially, the last 20, 40 years, because our food supply has changed. Our food habits have changed. We have to keep that in mind, that we're dealing with bodies that don't really think about our health at all. Our bodies think about survival, and that's pretty much it. So we have to be intentional with health, and we have to be intentional with happiness if that's one of our goals.
Welcome to the Leadership and Love podcast. We will cover leadership, mindset, personal development, and sales and marketing. You will experience thought-provoking conversations with both nationally and internationally recognized leaders. Our goal is to inspire you and deliver actionable items that you can implement that are going to help you accelerate your growth. Get ready to discover the magic and the power when you lead with love.
Hey everybody, you're about to listen to or watch an interview with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Teresa. And what I'd like to talk about that I didn't mention in this interview is leading yourself and loving yourself. And that's really what this interview is all about, in how to lead yourself, to love yourself in terms of food, nutrition, sleep, water, those kinds of things. I think you're going to get a tremendous amount of value out of this episode. And again, what is something that you can do today to take one small step to start improving your health? So as you listen to this podcast, remember, it's about leading yourself in this particular episode, leading yourself and loving yourself when it comes to self-care of your body and your brain. So enjoy it, and I hope you get a lot of value out of it. I'd like you to start with one of my favorite questions. What's one of the most amazing or powerful things you share with your clients to just start them down the road on this journey of personal development around their health and nutrition?
The first thing I do with clients is lay down the foundation. Just like when you're doing anything, the foundation is so important. And the foundation is actually sleep, stress recovery, movement, and food. All those four things. So, and they're amazed. They're like, I never thought sleep was connected to my food. And it is. It's connected. When you get a bad night's sleep, you eat, your hunger signals go up the next day. We have really well done studies to show that. Your blood sugar is slightly higher at your first eating event of the day, and your blood pressure is slightly higher after a bad night's sleep. So sleep is important. Movement's important. Stress recovery is important. All those things make it easier to sustain your food too.
Yeah, that's very powerful. You know, I mentor high school kids. One of the things I tell them for competitions, I tell them your body and brain do not work better with no sleep, right? I'm going to pull an all-nighter to study for the final exam. Not a good idea. But I'd like you to talk about something that I think is very, very critical. And I love these four pillars. The one you're talking about, stress recovery. What do you share with your clients how to recover from stress?
Talk about having 10 minutes a day of what I call stress recovery. So, and I call it walking, connecting, or relaxing. So walking is something where you're present and repetitive. That could be coloring. It could be walking where you're actually seeing what's around you. You're present. You're not in the future. You're not in the past. So you're not on your phone. 10 minutes of that. It could be cleaning up an area that's gotten disarrayed. So it just feels better when you get that organized. It can be knitting. It can be art. Art is great. So it's repetitive movement and it's being present. So then connecting, I talk about connecting with yourself, another person, or a higher being. So those are all ways that we can feel stress recovery, feel safe. And then relaxing is taking a shower, playing with a pet. It's different for each person, but again, it's being present in something where you feel afterwards a sense of, oh, I feel more grounded. So I encourage 10 minutes a day. That's for my clients.
So I love that. Her 10 minutes, she gave you a plethora of amazing things to do that are fun. It doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, I've got another thing to check off the list. Do something. I love the art. I love coloring, these simple things that people wouldn't think about, but it kind of checks their brain and their body out of the regular day, right?
Mhm.
And so let's go back now to one of your other pillars, and that was movement. And so, what are the things that you share with your clients to get their body moving?
Yeah, so it can be simple stuff to just making sure, checking in that you're not sitting in front of the screen for several hours. We have a study that where they had people sit for 8 hours and they took their blood sugar, and then they had them on another instance sit for 8 hours and stand up and sit down every 30 minutes. That's all they did different. Their blood sugar was 11% better. So just making sure you're moving your body regularly, if that's an hour, 30 minutes, or just not sitting in front of the screen for hours. So without getting up, standing, walking around the room. So that's the first thing. And then, we can work in other movement where it can be small bouts. I have one client that she works from home and she has a mini tramp, and she just does that 5 minutes several times throughout the day. So taking a walk after lunch, just a 5-10 minute walk. And then there's, the intentional activity where we do for 30 minutes, 2 times weight, resistance training. Those are important to, work our way towards. But, starting off with something, connecting with how you enjoy that, how it's making you feel better. And a big part of the work that I do is the mindset and looking at what you do is adding richness to your life. So that movement, you should feel good after. You should feel elevated mood, maybe even. So they're connecting this important mindset piece, how they feel, they're better, they like who they are, they like how they were more productive, possibly. And oh, that's what brings that. So that connection is very important to make.
So I love this, man. You're just a rock star. You're hitting it out of the park. There's a couple things I'd like you to touch on. One is that I've been blessed because I've learned and read a lot about health. And by the way, I'd like to just take a side note real quick. And Teresa just recently last week I did about a 3.5 day fast, and she helped me come out of that. And by the way, your advice and wisdom was very powerful, and it worked like magic. So thank you for that. Man, again, she really knows her stuff. So Teresa, there's a couple things I'd like you to talk about in that. One is, what is blood sugar and why is it so important?
So blood sugar is your body's fuel. So the simplest way, it's our gas for our bodies. So blood sugar is. So we need it and we can create it. Actually, our body can make it from fat, from protein, it can make it from different things, but our body keeps our blood sugar in a certain level. So it's a range, should I say. So with having that well managed is very important. So even small shifts over time done over and over can actually affect your health. So, blood sugar, affects your plaque buildup, it affects your blood pressure, it affects all kinds of things in your body.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful. I'd like you to talk a little bit about with blood sugar and why they have that crash. Like, for example, after a big lunch, right, or a big dinner, we've all been there where we have this big meal and then bam, we don't feel good. I mean, like we're lethargic, and we also are like really out of energy.
Yeah, sure. So, a couple things there. So, when you eat, of course, a bigger meal, you're going to have more expended to digestion. So, you're going to feel sluggish. If you're overeating, you're going to feel sluggish because your body has to revert a lot of resources to digestion. So, sometimes that lull is from just eating too much. So, other things that can happen, though, more related to the blood sugar, is if you are eating a large amount of something that breaks down easily to carb or blood sugar. So that's going to be, any kind of, sugar drink, uh, you know, pop soda, coffee drink, plus then, bread, pasta, French fries, anything that is easily broken down to carb. If we're having a big load of that at lunch, then our body very quickly breaks that down to the blood sugar, and then it enters the bloodstream all at once. Instead of a dribble, a kind of more of a slow release, which is what's healthier, we get this surge. So, and that uptick really quick, that slope going up when that hits your body, because your body's really good at breaking down things like bread, pasta, to blood sugar. Once it hits your digestion, you intake it. It doesn't take that long. So it's in your bloodstream all at once, and now you go up. So very quickly, there's a couple things that happen. Insulin unlocks the doors on your cells to let the glucose in. So you get a big dump of insulin. Your pancreas makes it as it sees the blood sugars rising. You dump a lot of insulin. This is a hormone that opens the doors on your cells to let the glucose in. So when we eat a lot of carb, we get a lot of insulin in the bloodstream, and because that blood sugar is going up, and we are clearing out then the bloodstream of the glucose very quickly. And so then we go down very quickly. Our body doesn't manage real well this up down. So we go up quickly, down quickly, and our body, we're going to be grabbing for carbs then because we're going down quick and our body's like, oof, maybe I'm going to go too low. I don't want to get my blood sugar too low. It's panicked. So when we eat a lot of carb, we go up quick. Our body then opens doors and lets the glucose into our cells really quick. It comes down quickly. And now we're left with, we're wanting carbs. We're reaching for, our body's in a sense hangry. So that's where the roller coaster happens. So I tell my clients, I say, I will always turn down a donut, not because I don't enjoy the flavor occasionally, but I will always turn it down because it's going to send me in this up down for the rest of the day. And it's going to drive me batty because I don't like being overly hungry or overly full. So it's going to send me on this roller coaster. So a lot of people are getting onto this roller coaster. They're grabbing for carbs later in the afternoon. Now, it could be stress related too. That's a whole nother topic too. But just from the food, you can be on this roller coaster up and down throughout the day if you're overeating on carbs then.
That's really powerful stuff. And I want everybody to understand what she's talking about is that's called the crash, right? When your insulin, your sugar goes up, and then at the other side of that, it crashes. And I love what you said earlier. I had the analogy in my brain of like an engine, right? A car engine. And this is the fuel. You would never in your wildest dreams think about turning on your car engine and then just smashing your foot on the gas pedal and let that engine run as fast,
Yeah,
right? Well, but that's what we do to our body and then think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, no, no, no. We like a more steady, slow climb that our body has energy where it needs it, doing its stuff. That's what it's been doing for, that's what it's known. This carb kind of bolus feeding, I sometimes call it, is new to our bodies, essentially, the last 20, 40 years, because our food supply has changed. Our food habits have changed. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Can you talk about the importance of not eating close to bed? Because you said something that's very important, and that is that when we eat, our body's now putting its energy towards digesting food. Why is it not good to eat close to bedtime?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So, yes, I recommend not eating 2 to 3 hours before bed unless you have a medical reason to be. The doctor has recommended that you do with medication or something. So, the reason is because a couple things. 2 to 3 hours before bed, your body starts to prepare yourself to get sleepy and to do the things it needs to do at night. So, in particular, the melatonin starts to rise and that helps you get sleepy. Now, melatonin does more than just make you sleepy, but it's part of what happens at night. Also, your body temperature starts to slowly drop. So, these things will be interrupted, totally stopped if you start to have food that uses your digestive system. So that's gonna make that wonky. So you very likely are not going to be as tired, or you're not going to get started with the thing. So the other thing is your body just doesn't it doesn't do its metabolism utilization as well later in the day. So when you're close to bed. So what I mean by that is if you were to eat a snack, a meal at 9 p.m. and look at your glucose and the things that happen from a metabolism viewpoint, it's going to be vastly different and worse at 9 p.m. than 9 a.m. So, and it's not a calorie burning thing. So I don't want anybody to get wrapped up in that. So, but it's how we just like function. We function much better with food, the way we metabolize it and utilize it in the first half of the day and we start to the last half of the day, it just gets a little worse. So we want to avoid, we just want to avoid food 2 to 3 hours. And we want to give our body a fast, what we call a 12-hour to 14-hour. We've got really good research in the last 10 to 15 years about kind of with our circadian rhythm, but we need to have that 12 to 14-hour fast every day to basically clean up what's happened during the day. So right now, you and we're creating garbage. And that garbage doesn't get a chance to fully be taken out, essentially, until the night during that 12 to 14-hour fast. So you want to, if you stop eating at 7, then you want to not eat until 7 to 9 the next morning. And, then you're not going to bed till 10. So then you've got that 2 to 3 hours there. So there's multiple things. And we do find, I mean, some of my clients, when they come to me and they're eating or having a drink at night. And I mean, like, it could be a tea with honey or something, or milk or something like that. I often will just ask them to just try it out because I work in what I call habit experiments. So would you be willing to try a couple nights not having that tea or not having that snack and see how you sleep, see how you feel the next day? So, and what most of the time happens is they're amazed at how much better they sleep, how better they feel when they get up. And then they connect how they feel to that habit. So instead of Teresa told me to do that, it's I feel better. I want to do this. So that's the mindset shift that I'm working on with clients, getting them to understand this really is the way they want to be and they want to do these things. And, yesterday I had a client that just like lit me up because she said, I I now get it. I want to be doing these habits. I now my mindset has changed. So I want to do these things instead of I should do these things. She saw the value in herself. She saw the value in what the work we were doing, and she wants to do it instead of I should do it. So that's an important piece that I work on with clients is that mindset transformation, that connection to the habits.
Yeah, that's awesome. You said you used a word that I'm sure most people are familiar with, but I'd like you to talk about circadian rhythms. And I also specifically, you talked about it with food. I'd also like you to share with our listeners, what are other things you share with your clients for them to slow down and find a circadian rhythm? Because I think it's really important. I've gotten in the habit. People make fun of me, but I have an alarm on my phone that goes off at 8:30 at night, and that's my alarm that I've got 60 minutes to start do right. Seriously, this is one of
Yeah,
my habits, right?
that's great.
And this, and in the next 60 minutes, I turn off screens. I start winding down. I might journal. I'll meditate, do those kinds of things. But I'm preparing my body for bed. And here's something else I read, and I'd like to talk about all this around circadian rhythms. The other thing is that the only thing I do in bed is sleep, and there's other things you're supposed to do, but you shouldn't be reading in bed. You shouldn't be playing on your phone in bed. Your body, you want to train yourself, get in the habit, so your body knows, yes, we're winding this thing down. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, so that's a great habit, setting an alarm. And so a lot of my clients, that'll be something they'll try out too, setting the alarm to just get themselves ready for bed, get off, wind down, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, the circadian rhythm is kind of setting your clocks according to, our biology. And so, there's getting sunlight in the morning. That's well proven that if you get sunlight, which is stronger than our indoor lights, that helps set your circadian, your master clock is actually behind your retina. So, and we want to get that set. And then there's clocks all throughout your body too that get set off of that and sometimes tweaked throughout the day. But getting sunlight, just having a regular routine to help set your circadian. Research recommends that we wait to have anything that's going to set our digestive system off an hour after we get up. And so I ask most of my clients to look at waiting for the coffee with the cream or the sugar an hour. You can have black coffee, black tea, water, that sort of thing, but you have melatonin that's actually still coming down, and you have your cortisol that is I call it finding its happy place to start the day. Now, cortisol is not a bad thing. So it actually helps us be alert and productive. And if we eat in that first hour, we could upset that. We know that most people are still, once they open their eyes, they need about an hour to find a good place with the melatonin and the cortisol. So, those are some things that have to do with circadian. And then eating every 3 to 4 hours after that during the daylight hours, starting to wind down again. When we think about how our bodies are kind of wired, the underpinnings of our bodies are set basically 1,000 to 10,000 years ago, because our how our how our respiration and our lungs and our those subconscious things that we have, we just don't even have to think about because they're already happening. Those things, they don't get upgraded, so to speak. I say we don't get like 6 upgrades a year like Microsoft or PC does. So for our systems, instead, our systems were set from procreation, survival of the fittest, which takes about 1,000 years to update. So right now, our systems, if we look at the underpinnings, they're like 1,000 years to 10,000 years optimized for. So we have to keep that in mind, that we're dealing with bodies that don't really think about our health at all, at all. Our bodies think about survival, and that's pretty much it. So we have to be intentional with health, and we have to be intentional with happiness if that's one of our goals. So because our body is not wired for happiness or health. So these are why these things work during the hours where we have light, that our bodies tend to be programmed better. We know we have to have people that support us that work at night, but that is off of our circadian rhythm, and we know that that is for some in some parts of our metabolism, it doesn't operate optimally. But we deal with what we have and work the best with it. So, that's what I work with my clients. But eating every 3 to 4 hours during the day, getting up, getting the sunlight, as we get closer to the end of the day, winding down, eating less. I try and front load, if I can help clients. If some people are eating like 70 to 80% of their calories at dinner, and that's just not going to work the best with your body. And I get it. Now's the time where you can sit down and enjoy. But if you can, you know, distribute your calories more lunch and breakfast, a little more so, and a little lighter than at dinner. So that's another thing that, again, it doesn't mean a calorie burning, but it's just how you function, how well you're optimizing your health then. And over years, that will make a difference.
Yeah, and one of the things that she just said that I want everybody to understand is, and I've read a fair amount around this too, our circadian rhythms are thousands of years old, right? Our circadian rhythms really built around the sun. Back in the day, we didn't have electricity. When the sun came up, we got up. When the sun went down, we went to sleep. And it was really just that simple. And so our artificial light and screens and all the things that we do well into the night is not good for our brain. It's not good for our body. One of the things I'd like you to talk about, I really believe that the planet came with everything we need to not only heal ourselves, but also to keep ourselves healthy. Would you please talk about that? Because I'm really referring to food, right? The things that are naturally here.
Yeah. So, well, I'm going to pivot and go to plants, because plants are something that, we have, all around us, that are in nature, that, farmers work very hard to grow. And they do so much for our bodies. A couple things to understand. We have 10 trillion is the estimate, microorganisms in our large intestine, and they are responsible for 70% of our immune system. So it's really important that we think about what's traveling and going through and doing all the different mechanisms in the small and large intestine. So the food we feed it communicates with the rest of our body and grows different microorganisms. And so plants are what our bodies are very optimized for, to digest through the small intestine and the large intestine. So when we're eating ultra processed foods, we're missing out on the data that we get when food travels in our small intestine or large intestine. The cool thing about plants too is they're so important for our health and living a long, healthy life. So plants, if you think about it, plants, they grow from this micro seed that we can't even hardly see in the soil. And over time, through rainstorms and radiation from the sun and pollution that we have out there and pests, they still grow. They still grow. They can fight all these things. They've figured out ways through, over time, how to wither all these storms, so to speak. And when we eat them, we get their defense systems. So we get, in a sense, their like, police, the police, we get the police, the Coast Guard, the EMTs, all those things. We get it wrapped in when we eat the plants. We get those great benefits in our bodies. So they help us, they have antioxidants, they have anthocyanins, they have all kinds. They have, we know, 50,000 different phytochemicals in them. Those are just bioactive compounds that do wonderful stuff in our body that help us slow down some of the aging process, some of the disease process, if not stop some of them. So that's why it's just so important to have these plants, these whole foods in our bodies.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, Doc, this has been fascinating. I have a question. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our audience?
Ah, just, kind of reemphasize this idea of it's not willpower. It's not a quick fix. This is a journey. It's a process that you whittle away with baby steps at a time to get to where you're going. And there's many gifts on the way. So when you have an open mind, you'll see these gifts. And, so many people think I'm going to take away things and their life is going to be less in some way. And they're missing it entirely. Your life is going to be fuller, richer, more vibrant. You're missing out by not being on this journey here now. So yes.
That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. How can people reach out or connect with you, Doc?
Yeah, I'd love to, connect with your listeners. So you can go to my website at Dr. Teresa Pangan. So that's DrTeresaPangan.com. So go to my website. You can see a little more on my approach and you can reach out to me. You can schedule an appointment. You can schedule a brief chat call. So you can get on my mailing list there. I put out a weekly nutrition scoop newsletter. So I'd love to, connect with your listeners.
Well, thank you again, Doc, for taking the time. It's just been a great conversation, and I appreciate everything that you had to add to our listeners, and I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Thanks again for joining us and listening to this episode of Leadership and Love. I would like to challenge you to ask yourself, what's one thing that you heard today that you can implement immediately to improve your leadership and accelerate your growth? If you've gotten value out of this episode or learned something that you can implement today, we'd ask that you please share it with those that you care about. Our goal is to create more leaders who are leading with love.